Ladies and gentlemen, Geoff Wilson here with Jesse Water Bongfeldt on this episode of Fighters, Coaches, and Fathers. Jesse, how are you, my friend?
Doing fantastic. Thanks, Geoff.
Nice. I've been excited to talk to you for a number of reasons. First of all, you fill every single category of the channel. You are a fighter, you are a coach, and you're a father. But one of the things I found interesting was back about, it may have been about 8 to 9 years ago, you had Josh Harley was one of your guys, and he was fighting in at Saturday Night Fights. And I didn't really understand the relationship. It was probably one of our first events, and I was sitting in the hotel, and he was sitting across from me, and I just started having a conversation with him, and I asked him the question. Oh yeah, okay. So we do this set of questions before we do commentary for fighters, and I said, who's your favorite UFC fighter? And everybody says GSP or somebody else, and he goes, well, my coach Jesse Bongfeldt, and I was like, okay, awesome, and go on, and man, Josh went into a story, and he talked about sort of growing up in orphanages and in a tough situation, how you really turned him around and how you essentially saved his life. And now Josh Harley's got a school in Montreal doing such a good job. And so it's rare. I think one of the sweetest things to hear is your name on somebody else's lips saying something positive. But before we get into your story, maybe let's talk a little bit about that relationship with Josh and how that sort of happened.
Josh was a young lad, kind of, I wouldn't say a street kid, but kind of in a similar situation to me. Very gypsy-like, kind of always on the move. Loved martial arts, though, so that's where we met, was in the gym. And then the more I found out about the kid, um, and the more welcome he was, just I took him under my wing and loved having him in my life. The kid was always very positive. He was always there for me as much as I was there for him. I've had similar situations since then. Actually, I got another kid who's living with me, and it's happened a lot of times. I've had a lot of good roommates, young dudes that just have been focused and driven and have these dreams, and they kind of, it's like reciprocal. They have all these questions, they have all these goals, and it's all these. I love being asked the questions, the big questions, the big questions about life, the big questions about martial arts, um, the big questions about goals, because they force me to actually come up with the answers that they're
Well,
looking.
yeah, you know what? And I can see that too, because when I watch your Facebook feed for a fighter, you've got more stuff on science and sort of things that are happening in the world that's really interesting. But we're sort of digressing. So let's go back a bit, and talk to me about um, your youth, you growing up, your family, and what was your first foray into the martial arts?
Um, I grew up kind of, like I said, a gypsy kid. My parents took the leash off me at a young age and they let me roam. I lived up on the highest hill in town, and I'd walk down into town as a little guy and just wander the streets. And I was always out there, out and about. And back then, there was no cell phones, there was no, uh, you know, way of communicating with your buddies except to go down in the pool hall, and there'd be hundreds of us kids as a young guy hanging out
So
with all
this
these
was
other kids.
was this in Kenora or? Oh,
Ontario, yeah, Kenora, Ontario.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so like there was a lot of culture down there, and I love being down there more than anything. So I'd sneak out of the house and go hang out with everybody downtown, but there was always fights going on down there. And my dad had an inclination towards martial arts movies, like Bruce Lee movies and Chuck Norris and Van Damme, and Spike TV was on at that time. Or no, it was TBS before it was Spike. That's what it was. Then it became Spike TV. And then eventually one day I ended up being able to fight live on Spike TV for UFC. So
Yeah,
um,
that's cool. But what about that transition from pool hall to hanging out with your friends to, your first gym, I guess, that you trained at, or
as a young guy looking at Bruce Lee, reading his philosophy, I had some friends that gave me some Bruce Lee books, and I was already big into martial arts. I trained on my own, even as like a friggin' 5-year-old. I was training. There's pictures of me as a little guy dressed in my little gis, jumping around. Little videos of me yipping and yapping, doing kicks and punches. But I was always of the opinion that I didn't want to be part of a formal class until finally broke down. I think I was around 10 or 11 and just said, you know what, I need to be in a room full of people that are competing. So I got into karate, I got into judo. All my cousins and my brother, they were all into judo, but my mom, she didn't want me in combat sports. She thought it was too violent, so she wouldn't allow me to play hockey either, but it didn't work out for her. So that was it. My dad really got me interested in martial arts. That and just being, kind of a little wandering street kid that saw all this stuff go down. It was just part of my life.
and
So
then as a wandering street kid, you start to really have quite an amazing career. When I looked at all the people that you had fought in the UFC, we're talking about guys or across the board, not just in the UFC, but Chris Weidman, Jamie Varner, Sean Pearson, and go Windsor for most of them. It's amazing to take a look at. How does Jesse Bongfeldt, and tell me a little bit about the nickname Water when you can in a second, and maybe that's a Bruce Lee thing. But before we get there, how do you go from here to becoming a professional fighter? Because I don't think there was a lot of amateur events going on when you were doing this. So how did that transition happen?
I came from a hardcore karate gym. It was Ishinru style. So there's kicks, punches, knees, and elbows. There was grappling. It was basically mixed martial arts. We just did it in a gi. Um, so my sensei at the time ran a hard traditional class. And every day I went into that class and I just kind of dreamt that one day, some sort of scout would walk through the door for UFC because I started watching UFC right from, I think it was UFC 3 was the first one. And back in the day, we had to pass around VHS tapes to see them. And everything was bootlegged and, you know, VHS copies, and we'd pass them around like I said, down at the pool hall, and everybody got to watch these things. But that was a big influence on me. I always wanted to be part of that right from the get go. Uh, Looking for that scout to walk through the door just never happened. So I decided one day to just pack my bags up and hit the road. And I ended up on my way to BC, stopping in Lethbridge, Alberta, because I met some Mormons that were nice enough to let me stay in their house for a couple of weeks. So there was these 6 guys, these Mormons, and they were non-swearing, non-drinking people, very good people, very open, and they let a savage like me in there. So that was very kind of them. Um, so I was out walking from gym to gym, checking out which martial arts were in the town that I was currently at. And Lee Meehan was there training with his brother Rob. I looked in the window of, at the time it was Means Mixed Martial Arts, watched them train, and they looked out the window, saw some weird little kids staring out at them, and they came out, opened the door, and welcomed me in, said, "Come on in." And I told him my situation. He said, "Well, why don't you come and start training?" Within 2 months, Lee had me teaching at his gym.
Within 2 months, you were teaching at the gym.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I had a lifetime of experience in martial arts already at that point, and
Yeah.
he
Just
saw
so
that.
people that may not know who Lee Mean is, Lee Mean's been on the show before. He's the father of Jordan Mean. He's still an active fighter. And Jordan Mean, the current UFC fighter, just had a win in Calgary. Did you always have the nickname Water, Jesse?
No, I didn't. It used to be lightning. I guess I was fast, right? So as an amateur, that's what it was. And it was close to right at the beginning of my pro career, right at the end of my amateur, somewhere in there. Um, I was fighting for King of the Cage, and Tim Tamaki and Tim the Chin Tamaki and Mauro Ronaldo had gotten together the night of weigh-ins. Now, I don't know what they were doing that night, but whatever it was, they were having a good time. They had the little conversation that they had. And I was a proponent of Jeet Kune Do. I taught Jeet Kune Do for years, and they made the connection between that and the water Bongfeldt. I'm not sure where else they were going with that, but they were having a good time that night and decided that that was my new nickname. So as I walked out for my King of the Cage fight, that's how I was announced. And I kind of heard it then and there as I was walking out and kind of shook my head and had a little grin and said, you know what, that's pretty good.
Well, it kind of works for the Bruce Lee stuff and for the funny stuff as well. That's amazing. It's funny that you mentioned that they sort of created the nickname. Denis Zelinsky is a Ukrainian fighter in Saskatoon right now, and we made a mistake on his form when we were doing it, and when Sean went up to introduce him, he put his occupation as his nickname, and because his English wasn't great, what he did as a job was he worked in a warehouse, and so he stocked shelves at night. Yeah, Sean went up there and he introduced him as Denny's the Night Stalker Zelensky.
Hey,
They're
that's
going,
awesome.
yeah, it was one of those things, and we went and apologized to him after, you know. But it was
You're
it's
like,
funny.
no need for an apology. That probably made his whole career right there.
It kind of happens like that. So that's awesome. So Moro and those guys set up the nickname, and you start doing pro fights. There's no real amateur. Talk to me about the process and King of the Cage, and then getting called to go to the UFC.
Yeah. After I went pro, I met more and more fighters that I respected. Guys like Hoist Gracie and Chuck Liddell and Ken Shamrock and um, who else? Dwayne Ludwig and who else would I have met at that time? Uh, the Diamond. Yeah. So I was meeting all of these guys and I was getting to train with them and my skills were getting better.
So you're
I,
training with them where? Like you're training with Lee, you're coaching with Lee, and then all of a sudden you're
yeah.
moving. So
Yeah, well, he brought guys in. Actually, Roy Harris, he brought Roy Harris in for the first time the same year that I had moved to Alberta. So I was getting, and Boss Rutan, actually, he was bringing Boss Rutan in a lot. So I was getting to train with these guys and just learning a ton. And it was just perfect timing for everything. Mixed martial arts was just starting to grow. I found a gym that absolutely supported everything that I need, brought in all these, you know, respected world champions, elite level coaches. Just, it was just perfect. Everything just came together. Um, I was taking out some good aces, and yeah, I was taking out even guys that I had a lot of respect for, guys that I looked up to. It was a good time.
that's awesome. And AI, when if anybody else wants to take a look at Jesse's wiki in his and the people that he's beaten, the people he's trained against. It's pretty awesome to see those guys. Like, oh, that guy, that guy, that guy. It's awesome to hear that. Um, so let's talk about maybe a little bit further down. You've had some great opportunities and done fairly well in terms of where you're at. Um, what sort of, when do you know it's time to sort of retire or to move into full-time coaching or that type of thing? I mean, we see a lot of fighters like Chuck and Tito going to still do stuff really quite a bit past their prime. Thank God they're not fighting younger fighters. Like, thank God they're really fighting guys that are the same age. I think because I think it gets far more dangerous at that level, and the injuries take a long time to retire. But talk to me a bit about how that process happened when you had to or decided to retire.
Yeah, for me, there was no process like that. I got injured. I tore my right bicep, tore my left bicep, and they were kind of back-to-back injuries.
Oh wow!
So it was just after UFC, so it was probably good timing. Um, the way UFC works, they give you a 4-fight contract. If they don't have you up on the roster for the next couple of events, they'll just release you from your contract so you can go still fight elsewhere. And I was just at that point, so I was looking to do a couple fights outside UFC, jump back in. So that you're kind of in and out at first until you really solidify your position. But yeah, I just ran into a couple of injuries. I've really been
Jesse,
lucky though.
just a second. Bicep tear on one. Couple weeks later, couple months later, bicep tear on the other. How does that even happen? Like,
Yeah, actually, this right bicep tear took about 11 months to heal. And then almost to the day that it started fully healing with no pain, I ended up tearing the left one. The right one was from a right hook to a guy on his wing block. He wing blocked with his left arm. I threw my right hook and popped it during sparring, and I was kind of moving around and thinking something's not right here. This really hurts. So, and then the left one was just from some inverted sit-ups. I was on my last rep. Buddy thought, or I was on my second last rep. Buddy thought I was done, and he let go of my leg, and I back rolled out. So I grabbed the bar and just kind of tore it. But that's, nature of the game. And in retrospect, I do all these stretches and all these exercises that are kind of prehab now. At least the saying is prehab is the same as rehab.
right?
So, as an older guy, you look back and you realize all these mistakes. So I'm able to, show some of my guys it's part of the natural process. I needed guys to train with where I was. I was fairly isolated. I moved back home to be with my son, and I started a gym up 10 years ago, and people came in the door. People loved what I did. So it was the natural process to start coaching. I needed guys to train with to prepare for fights. All of my TKO fights, all of my UFC fights, I prepared for at my own gym. So having to get creative is a big part of that. And, I got a lot of experience, so I think it's paid off for these young lads. But retirement was never part of my vocabulary, and it still really isn't. It's just kind of, like I'm still itching to compete. I did a bunch of jiu-jitsu tournaments in the last while and taken home some belts and some grappling tournaments and some gi, some no gi. I got my black belt a year and a half ago from Roy Harris,
Oh, congratulations,
and
that's
I've
awesome.
been focusing on all like in UFC. I went in as a white belt. I was fighting guys like Rafael Natal, a black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guy, and I'm sure I fought a few other black belt Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys before that. But it really, it's really highlighted when UFC goes over. They do your bio, they show everything. So I realized then and there that I got to get my shit together and start getting these belts. So that's been my focus. I focused. I went from white to black over the last 6 years,
Huh.
and
It's
now that
good
I
to
have that
hear.
belt, I'm finishing up my karate belt. I'm in the process of getting my black belt in my old traditional style of karate, something that I had zero interest in before. Um, Students have been a big motivation in that. They want their belts. Now they're waiting on me to um, achieve those benchmarks so that they can get theirs. You know,
Yeah, interesting. Um,
retirement. What is that?
yeah, what's every time? I get it. I had no idea last month when I saw the video on Facebook of you playing guitar and singing, man. You're kind of a bit of a rock star too. Where did your passion for music come from?
Well, I started playing when I was 10, but uh, not having fought in the last 5, 6 years, whatever it's been, I've probably lost count. I needed an escape from the escape, so I picked it up again, and we had a band going up until last year, and then it's all original stuff. It's called The Way. I love that, and it's heavy rock. And then this last year, I've just been focusing on all my own stuff. I have probably 40 acoustic songs. And I have a massive library of books. I love reading. Um, those are my escapes from the escape. But I'm full time at the gym now, so I do personal training during the day. I do all sorts of group classes at night. So for me, my music is, and you know what? I really got nothing to escape from. It's just something that I like.
Yeah, well, it's you're very talented, and I'll make sure that we throw the link on the YouTube channel so people
Thank you.
can actually see how talented you are. It's awesome to see. A lot of times when fighters are so multifaceted and multi-talented in other ways. I mean, the only thing I think I can do is talk, and don't do that half as good as anybody else. But it's good to
That
see.
works.
Man, it was awesome to see that. I was like, what? Um, so you've been a dad now for quite some time. Your son's 10, did you say?
My little guy's 10 years old. Yeah.
So talk to me about your son and growing up the way that you did, and how this lifestyle of fighting has helped being a good father.
Well, he was a huge motivation in my life right off the bat. The second I knew he was coming, I knew I just had to change my ways, get my shit together, and just kind of take a straighter path. The first few years of his life, I competed a lot. The first half of his life, I was competing, and then in the last 5 years, like I said, been focusing on that gym. Well, and that's a place where he's gotten to grow up in. Now that he's a little older, I've started kids martial arts classes with him and all of his buddies. It's an atmosphere for him. Uh, it's a root, like an anchor point for him in his life, where martial arts was the exact same thing for me. It was a place that I could always go back to and reside in, that kept me anchored. It was the thing that it was the linchpin that allowed me to not stray too far in life. And I like seeing that for him. I like seeing that for him and his friends.
What what's the difference? I mean, you've got some guys that are doing some Muay Thai now. You've got some really talented guys in your team. What's the difference between training kids and training adults or teenagers?
Yeah, well, we got a really good, strong Thai boxing program. We got a strong Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu program. I got uh, a guy, Cody Poles. He's won the worlds at blue belt. This year at purple belt, he's won the American Nationals. He's going to be doing the worlds probably in December, and I'm sure he's going to win that too. Um, so these guys who I've taught for a long time, they all develop, as martial arts is, very a personal style. Everybody has their own thing that they bring to the table, and that thing often isn't revealed until the experience is there. They have their trials and tribulations. The little guys, they don't really have that. They're a clean slate. So with a very defined progressive curriculum, they're always looking for that next thing. Once they've learned that one thing, they latch onto it, they perfect it, and they're always asking for their next stripe. These little guys, they're they see it on TV, and I'm sure they're dreaming about the same things that I'm dreaming about.
Yeah, yeah, interesting. Absolutely. Um, so, talk to me. This, I mean, I realized there was an incident. Not an incident. I'm sorry, I'm being weird about it. But a couple months back or last month, your mom had passed away. And I think it's always interesting when we talk about family and parents that they do have measurable marks and times on our lives and as our characters. But
They certainly do.
is there a something, what's one of the most useful lessons or things that you learned from her?
You know, it's unfortunate. I mean, I've had a lot of friends in my life pass away, but not anything so centered as my mom. Such a strong influence in my life, and a close family member. You don't realize how influential often until it's too late. I was very lucky the last few months of my mom's life. I was in the transition between my old job and getting the gym going full time. So there were a lot of mornings where I was able to go to her house and just hang out with her and talk with her and chat with her. And I got a lot of good video over the years of her, and I've been looking at that stuff. And I realize now just how stoic she really was, how calm and centered and focused. I had to write her eulogy, so I went and combed through everything in her life and her experiences, her travels, her influences on other people and in their life. And my mom, she was a gardener and she was a babysitter. She was a fitness instructor. And I see all these marks from her life now on mine more than ever. I see the artistry in the way she lived her life, these things that I didn't even realize were art, like the gardening, for example. Her gardens were just incredible, and she did them all over town. She worked for the city, and she applied herself fully to her art, which, when she passed away on the day where she decided to leave, because now we have assisted suicide, right? And she had her and I both had an experience with her best friend about 20 years ago where the cancer went to her brain. And the result was very upsetting for everybody. So my mom did not want that. So she held my hand in her hospital bed and she told me that the number one thing that I need to do is just stay absolutely busy. Stay busy, stay focused, and pick tasks and just achieve them. And just, that's what she said, you got to stay busier than ever because these next few weeks are going to be very hard on you, she said. And she had her funeral planned. And I stayed up till, 5 in the morning working on the eulogy the day of her funeral. And nothing was coming to me. And then everything came to me. And it all stems from from those words that she said, stay busy. So
Man,
her work ethic is the main thing that I can take away from everything. No matter what it was that she did, she worked hard at it.
that's thank you for that. That's amazing, and I know it's a tough time to do that. My dad passed away a couple of years back, and I know it's not easy. But thank you for sharing that.
Thank you.
Let's switch gears now and talk to me about club and some of the guys you got there now. And then if someone wants to train, what's the best way to get over there and get to train with a former UFC fighter in Kenora, Ontario?
Yeah, United Fighter Martial Arts has been a project of mine for 10 years, but only in the last year has it become a business. I opened it up to the public uh, almost a year ago to the day. I started the kids' classes, the women's classes, the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu classes, but previous to that, it was just a competition team. That's all that it was. It was just a place for us to train and compete with each other to get sharper for all these competitions that we're looking for. Now, I've been working on a project most of my life. I have volumes and volumes and stacks of notebooks. I've been working on a project I call Budo-jitisu. It's the art of unifying infinite properties of technique into nothingness. And I think anybody who does martial arts realizes the open-ended nature of techniques. I think people can realize that any combination you do has an infinity symbol in front of it and after it. So, the art of unifying infinite properties of technique into nothingness has been both a mathematical and a philosophical journey for me. So, I've constantly been unifying principles in martial arts, breaking them down to their core being. So, the whole idea is you take um, something something that's infinite and you look for the limitations to what is infinite within those. So say for example, um, let's go with the four ways of counter striking. So now you can combine these four ways of counter striking into any number of combinations, like I said.
Just
And
for our viewers, Jesse, what would be the four ways of counter striking for clarity?
the four ways of counter striking are looked at in terms of somebody throwing whatever attack at you it is. It doesn't matter what the attack is, because the principle applies. Now, as a principle, it's a law, meaning it's not like a concept where it's an idea, it's a law. There's nothing outside of this. So somebody throws an attack at you. Now, this could also be applied to grappling, but I often use it in terms of striking. So when an attack is thrown at you, you have an open line to counterattack, meaning you don't even deal with the limb at all. You just go straight in, hit the open line. That's the first way of counter striking. The second way of counter striking is to defend with one tool and counter strike with that same tool. The third way of counter striking is to defend with one tool and counter strike with another tool. And that could be any one of your other three tools. So if it's my right hand parrying, then we will use our right leg round kick, left front kick, left hook, whatever it is. But you're defending with one tool and counter striking with another. And then the fourth way of counter striking is to block, check, hit. So it's two defensive movements followed up sequentially with your counter strike. So that's just an example of a unifying principle in Budo-jitsu. Now, what Budo-jitsu really is just, it's a pure technique. It's a technique that is uh, not absent of one of the principles. So tactically, you could look at opportunity, timing, and angle. If one of those principles is missing, if the opportunity isn't there but the timing and the angle is, your technique might land, but it's not a perfect technique. If if the angle isn't there but the opportunity and the timing is, it's still not a perfect technique. You see, so and then the third version of that. So the idea being that to achieve a perfect technique, we do these things naturally all the time, but we don't truly know what they are, what they involve. There's so many variables, whether it's physical attributes or tactical concepts or strategical principles. There's a lot going on there, a lot more than meets the eye, I think. So I've
I
built 3 books off of this.
sorry, you did what?
I built 3 books off of this. The first book is, I call it the Book of Strategy. The second book is the Book of Elements, or things that don't change. And then the third book is the Book of Variables, or the things that do change. So together, they're basically one large mathematical principle. It's a
That's
beautiful system, but there's
yeah,
nothing outside the system. And all it really is Bruce Lee talks about this corpse, right? Uh, the classical man, the system as being a corpse. Well, the thing that brings that corpse back to life is the infinite properties of technique. So you can have a system, and you're not truly trapped inside that system if you understand the open-ended nature of each one of these things. So technique is limitless, man.
man, I love that. I heard a quote a little while back that said the mind is like a parachute. It works best when it's open, and I think that you've really got something there. And I'm really excited to maybe reach back out to you in about a year's time or so to see how the strategy and things are developing, Jesse. But if anybody wants to get a hold of you and wants to train in Kenora, what's the best way for them to get a hold of you?
Uh, I get a lot of people contacting me through Facebook. As you know, my Facebook is off the hook.
Yeah,
So,
it really is. If anybody
yeah,
knows, add Jesse as a friend on Facebook because it is entertaining, it is interesting, it is intriguing, and when he plays music, it is
a little
awesome.
bit of left, a little bit of right. Got to mix it all together. You got to keep the idiots in there too. They're entertaining as can be, man. But no, I have a phone number people can contact, and it's on my sign on the building. So yeah, 807-464-0656. United Fighter, call
Sweet,
me
you just gave the
anytime.
internet your personal cell phone number, so it's probably going to be blowing up now. But that's awesome.
As long as the
Uh,
business comes in, it's all good.
you don't have to answer it. That's true. Jesse Water Bongfeldt, Jesse, my friend, thank you so much for taking the time to be on today. We're going to add some of your videos on the YouTube channel from what we've seen there, but I really enjoyed our conversation, and I hope to do it again in the next 6 months to a year, if that's cool with you.
Doors open, man.
Thanks, brother. Talk soon.
Thank you.